Before I do the 500-mile servicing and tune-up, I'd like to share with you how I put this bike together. 2.5-year build on this, brought to me as a basket case, the frame, the combat engine, tranny and primary, and the oil tank, front end parts, wheel hubs, and that's it. Everything else, the owner and myself had to assemble. This Fender's from Europe. He brought it back from Europe. I had to restore it. The tank he bought from a fellow in North Vancouver who never used it. The tank set the tone for the entire bike. And from the shape of the tank, I built the tailpiece. All my engineering, all from scratch. All done in red line here, except the actual TIG welding. So let's take a closer look at this craft. We'll pull the seat off, we'll pull the tank off, and see what's going on. Now the seat comes off, same as a stock Norton. The shock bolt loosens off the mechanism. Same as a stock Commando. The same forked brackets, only these are polished stainless. 1/8 aluminum seat pan. I built this, I used an oxygen bottle in my press to press this aluminum like this. And then this had to be trimmed off to accommodate the frame. You can see the frame here. Straight, drops down. Here's the seat bumpers that I made up from modifying exhaust grommets. And here's the mechanism where the seat mount slips in there. Nuts silver soldered on the back, so you only use one wrench on the outside here. So that's how the seat works. Now let's pop the tank off. See what's going on under there. Now this huge tank, this is some of my work here, this strap. It came with this mounting hinge here, but I had to make up this strap and the bracket that runs under the frame. So this 5 gallon of gasoline here is held on by 1/4 inch bolt. And my very fancy bracketing on the bottom. Here we go. Check that out. 4 hours of my life working very nicely. So let's undo the fuel lines. Get this tank off of here. Nice new components. Makes it very easy to work on when it's all new and they fit properly and it's been assembled properly. It makes maintenance a breeze. So 1/4 inch bolt holding this entire tank on. Now the strap goes up like this. I already have a piece of wire here that will hold this out of my way. There we go. Now this should lift off, no problemo. There we go. Oh, lots of gas in there. Don't drop that. Costs you about $1,500 to $2,000 to replace it with tax and shipping. Okay, we got the horn there, rubber mounted. Speaking of rubbers, so what I'd like to show you is the tailpiece. Made in England. Yeah, British Columbia, Canada, England. All Redline's designing, engineering, and fabrication here in-house, except for the TIG welding. So let's take a closer look at this, shall we? And explain to you how this was built. The main thing here is this aluminum. 3/8 by 1.5 inches. That runs from the shock bolts underneath. That's what's underneath this shell, is 3/8 by 1.5 inches, both sides. Now, you can see underneath here the inside shell, and there's the stainless cover up the seam where the fender starts. So we have the inside shell, the outside shell, both 14 gauge aluminum, and here's where they meet. You can see the welding here. Here's where the TIG weld joins the outer shell, the inner shell, all to this 3/8 right there. You see the welding there? All the way along. And there's a weld across the back. And welded across here. Welded across here. You keep the corner sharp because you don't want to take the weld off. So the welding I had done at Broadway Welders, Chico does all my welding, MIGging and TIGging of aluminums. My combustion chamber modifications, she does the welding on those. And other than that, this is 100% done here at Redline. Now, how this is built is pretty simple. You start with this stuff here. Get the trajectory you want for your design. Drill out the shock bolt holes here and mount these two plates on your frame. Then get some cardboard and draw out your shell. And whatever your shell design is, goes around here. Whatever design you decide. And then you tape it to here. You tape it to these rails and you build all the inside. Make sure your tire clearance is what you need. Then you got to build this flange here. Has to be built. This back flange. And then we got the license plate mounting. You see, it's not a full piece of aluminum. I've trimmed it off. I want this as a crumple zone. You back into something, you're not bending the aluminum. Less chance of doing any damage, though this double wall on this 3/8 is almost indestructible. And vibrations are nothing on this. It's a license plate rattling. But that thing is not going to fall apart with the way this has been constructed, with the 3/8 by 1.5 rails running right from those two shock bolts right to the very end here. And then the continuous weld. So this is solid as you can get. And then starts here at the fender. The fender is a 6-inch alloy Wassel fender, very rare, hard to find, which I've also put this groove in like a pinstripe along the edge to match the front fender. And then the fender extends all the way down to a mud flap. There's the factory mount. There's where my stainless plate extends the fender down to the mud flap. Right there. We don't want mud and sandblasting on our trick swing arm. We're getting some rocks from the forward motion. There's my trick swing arm work there. Triangulated swing arm. How that's done is with handlebar tubing. That's handlebar tubing. Pick your size, pick your shape, cut the pieces so that you have clearance. You got to get the chain clearance right there and side to side. When you do this, you have to have your swing arm perfectly true. You have to be sure that your axle slots are parallel with the front bushing and the pin. Your swing arm cannot be twisted. You have to true it up perfectly. Then, when you're doing your welding, this has to be jigged to keep it that way. Because once this is welded up, this is extremely strong. So I would suggest after you tack it, you check that it's still true, and then true it up then. And then as you weld it, go along, you keep checking it. Because once it's welded up, it's virtually impossible to move these rails independently. It gets really strong. So that's if you want to trick out your swing arm. Handlebar tubing, get your chain clearances right, and make sure this is kept true through the whole process. Now back to our tailpiece. The most difficult thing about building a tailpiece like this is start to finish keeping the aluminum unadulterated. You see this aluminum? Not one divot, not one scratch, not one gouge, not one dent, not one buckle. Because any of that makes this a piece of junk. So besides having to know how to fabricate, you have to be very careful, even if you're a great fabricator, to keep this brand new alloy. Here's a piece here. That's what I built it out of. It has the skin on it. So you keep this skin on your alloy. You keep this on here while you're constructing this. So your cardboard plates you lay out on here. You keep this plastic on during the whole process. Now, after you assemble your shell and you put it on these existing rails, how I kept this in place for TIG welding was with aluminum solder. Not many people are aware of it. It's a fabulous product. It's called Aladdin 3-in-1 rod, which I coined Aluminu. You don't need any flux. All you need is a torch and clean aluminum, and the stuff is strong as hell. In certain applications, it's perfect. If you have a timing cover that is smacked in, you know tigging or migging just blows it up because the oil, Aluminu on the inside, works beautiful. So what I did was tack it together, a couple of tacks of Aluminu. I think you can see one in there actually. See some of my tacking there, some of it against the wall there. On this side also. Yeah, I see that tack actually come apart from the process. So you put some Aluminu. Anyone can use Aluminu. Everyone should have some Aluminu. Aladdin 3-in-1 rod from Chicago, Illinois, America. Great stuff. You repair anything with it, just with a torch. No MIG, no TIG required. So then you take it to your welder and they do all the welding, all the MIGging and TIGging, and then you clean it up. And the whole time you do it without one scratch or divot or dent or hit this thing. You can be finishing this off, running it on the polisher, and bwham, nail it and destroy it. Right? 5 minutes to go. This tailpiece cost the customer over 1,500 Canadian dollars for me to build for him, including the front fender piece here that was free. So there you go. Now here's the electrical panel. This is 14 gauge aluminum also, one bolt there. Then it's got a bend here and it bolts onto the frame there where the oil tank bolts on. This panel is indestructible. This is so strong, you could probably lift up the bike with that. Totally indestructible. Check that. See that blue light flashing? Idiot light. Got your ignition on, idiot. See how things are working here. We got a brake light? You betcha. Got a horn? Oh yeah. You got signals? Oh yeah. Look at them go. Bing, boom, bang. Of course you got your lights. Oh, the lights are on. Let's go. High beam, low beam, flasher. Everything working excellent. Just like we like it. I take myself very seriously with wiring. I think I'm the best wiring person in the northwest here of this continent when it comes to vintage British motorcycle wiring. I haven't seen anyone do better. Look at this, the whole system here right in front of your face. No bending over, tearing anything apart, take the seat off. Everything you need to know right there. Boom, boom, boom. Easy as can be. Oh, turn off the ignition. So the oil tank came with the bike, was in a fire. I needed to polish it, do some work on the fittings, do some work on the cap. And that's in good shape and working well. Now here is the oil radiator. This is off a triple trouble. They also come on MG sports cars from the 70s. It doesn't come looking like this. It comes with an end on it that mounts a reflector. Now cutting that end off there is tricky. You have to be an expert metal worker to know what you're doing with that. I warned a friend 40 years ago who liked what I did on my other bike, the same thing. So he was going to do that actually on his feather bed. I warned him because he was not a metal worker. Don't do it. And within 5 minutes, he had ruined his brand new radiator, cut through. So unless you're a super pro metal worker, don't even think about trimming that off. So these stainless brackets are the same as factory ones. Then mounting is done with this bracket here. 2 holes in the frame, very simple. 2 1/4-inch holes. Just fits perfectly. I'm so pleased. These foot pegs here, both sides are Commando modified. The feather bed and N15 came with them off the frame here. And because it has Commando clutch case, that is not happening. Plus those were a ridiculous way to have foot pegs. You can see over here I have a modified Commando one piece, much stronger, because the one on the N15 or feather bed on the outside of the clutch case is ridiculous attachment. So this is much more secure. We have your N15 original or Atlas feather bed brake pedal and your Atlas feather bed chain guard and brake system. Now the exhaust on this bike, this is a Suzuki muffler on this, off a big 4-cylinder. Very quiet, a little too quiet. And guard made from the original S-pipe guard. Now this is some of my exhaust work here, 2-into-1. You see it on the other bikes. This is S-pipes. This one here is not modified, just cut off. This one has been bent slightly here. Plus, to accommodate the front, it has been cut in 2 places through there and a cut here. There's a weld there. So that's how that pipe was made. And those are S pipes. Always use bronze nuts. Here, get rid of your factory metal ones. No good. They're not sized correctly, and of course heat transfer is much better when they're bronze, expanding and contracting with the head. These days they make a 3-lug one. So you want a 3-lug bronze chrome-plated exhaust nut. The 3 lugs, you can't see the 3. Norton has one from the factory, and that's where you can put a wrench on and reef them up tight without breaking the fins off. That's why you want a 3-lug bronze exhaust nut. Anyway, let's see here. We got on the air cleaner velocity stacks with a K&N and one of my redline shrouds, which we may end up drilling out even further, put another row of holes there for more breathing, depending on how this top end works out. So this is a combat engine, tranny and clutch cases that came with the basket. The head is not the head. The head that came with this was shot. The exhaust seats had been ground so much, pocketed right down. This is a head that I have modified. It has been modified into a single squish combustion chamber, D-shaped, same as a Harley Evolution motor was. They're D-shaped combustion chamber designed by Porsche. I copied that, and that's what's in this bike and 2 other bikes I have on the floor here. 2 other bikes I have on the floor here are Cosworth style dual squish combustion chambers. So what we have is Kibblewhite valves, stainless valves, and Kibblewhite valve springs. Kibblewhite really was genius with the valve springs. They're larger than factory. The factory had excessively thick valve spring cups, which Kibblewhite took the thickness down to a minimum and then extended the top one, titanium also, to fit a larger valve spring. Very smart, excellent work. So we have a copper head gasket, and I'm pleased to say, same as everything else in this shop, no leaks whatsoever with my head gasket truing. Head gasket surfaces always have to be trued. Never put your bike together without checking the trueness down to 1/1000th of an inch. Because after a harsh ride, all you want to see here is dust, no oil. So I'm totally pleased. Speaking of oil, this oil line here empties the rear oil from the intake valves, which usually just gets peed and wasted in the timing cover. Instead, I reroute it down over the lifters and the cam. I've been doing this for over 4 decades. All my bikes here have it. No one else in the world does this trick. People seem to frown upon the idea of having 100% more oil going past their cam and lifters. And I say to them, well, how would you like to run no oil past your lifters and cam? How would that work for you? So annoying. Anyway, yeah, so we got a combat cam here, what it came with. Squish modification. Nice little combination. Give it a little more performance, but not going mental. And having some motor that is wants to wear out prematurely and run hot as hell and guzzle gas. We don't want to guzzle gas these days. You want fuel efficiency. So moving right along the front end, stock Norton front end. These triple trees came powder coated already, and I just had to straighten one out. So I managed to keep the powder coating good. New fork tubes, of course, new bushing seals and all that. Slider, the brackets trimmed off here, the fender mounting brackets trimmed off. Your classic hub, which is working very well. And these alloy rims. These are the worst rims I ever laced up in my entire career of almost 5 decades. These were so poorly made. And because we waited 2 months from Europe for them, we weren't sending them back. Do not buy this brand of rim. It starts with D. Don't buy them. The worst ever. But after me, I had to run these after truing them on a lathe just to get where the weld is to be tolerable. They were out 1/8 of an inch new. Ridiculous. Anyway, custom-made bars to suit the tank, so when this drops down, it fits into the tank properly. Plus the bars, this is double stick welded on 14 gauge tubing, which is proper handlebar tubing. Some of these bars come brazed, double stick welded. This is your crash bar on this bike. This is what protects your bike, this here and your foot peg. This 1/2-inch high grade bolt and this Norton, these are very tough, these Norton castings. This is the crash bar, because that tank alone that goes on here is worth almost $2,000, besides what you do to the exhaust just from a simple dropping the bike. So you can't have clip-ons, which I call clip-offs, that just would fly in and smash that tank. No way. This thing falls over, this protects the tank. So, if you had enough of this, what else have we got to say that you need to know? Oh, the rare Fender brought back from Europe, stainless cross brace, bolted on. Oh yeah, converter motor mounts here. These converter motor mounts, they fit very nicely. Fit very nicely. The front one was missing, so we had to make these front ones up. And the top motor mount is some of my work also. Now this is overbuilt, this top motor mount. The owner's freaked out. He owns an isoelastic Commando, which of course is smooth when you rev it up. And rigid mounted 750s, they vibrate. That's why they built the isoelastic. They tried every balance factor in the book. Better rubber mount the motor. So the owner of this bike, he is freaked out to rev it up. He's only brought it up to 3,500. So when I had it out filming it, I brought it up to 6 Gs 3 times, and it's normal. The same vibes all the way to the top, just like a normal 750 Atlas. But here's the deal. This motor mount could be transferring vibes from the motor up to the neck. So what I propose to do is disconnect it, undo these bolts, disconnect this motor mount, see if the vibes drop down. If they do, then we'll build a new motor mount, the linkage type, with the eyelets at each end. The motor mount on the top is supposed to prevent the motor from going back when you accelerate, from pulling back. So the linkage type will prevent that, but it allows it to shake up and down and not transfer the vibes. So that might be a change on this bike. But other than that, this bike is working excellent. Everything is just the way it's supposed to be, exactly where I put it, and doing what it's supposed to do. So I'm very pleased overall. Anyway, I'm now going to torque up the top end, check what the tappets are, put the tank back on, seat back on, take it for a test ride, and the owner will then put 2,000 miles on this bike before I see it again. Bye for now. Turn the key on.